This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today it is Thursday. It's February 22nd, 2024. Thank you for joining us here at thetruthcentral.com. You can find me at X at CorsiJerome1, altogether all small letters, and on Substack, you can find us at JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. First story I want to cover today has to do with the Ukraine. There have been some major developments in Ukraine, and they're just beginning to be recognized here that the truth about Ukraine is finally starting to surface. The truth is much worse for the Ukrainian side than the Biden administration or the Western pundits or the mainstream media, the CIA-dominated media would like to let you know. The key event this week was this fall of Avdeevka, a city of, I believe it said Avdeevka in Donetsk, which is the region, one of the two regions in the eastern part of Ukraine, Donetsk and Donbass, which are both Russian speaking and have historically been part of Russia. Now, this fell last week. It was a shock to all of this lying that we're getting out from the echo chamber mainstream media, the CIA-dominated media, which has been saying, oh, Ukraine's going to win. They're going to have a counteroffensive. The counteroffensive failed terribly. And the front lines are not stalemated. This is not a World War I standoff with trenches like the media was presenting. Russians have been making steady gains. So what we see is that finally there's some cracks here in the reporting. A couple of stories that even the mainstream media that caught attention. This New York Times story about the city's fall leaves Ukraine with an even tougher fight ahead. Now that's a big admission. So a Voice of America on February 16th cited a U.S. defense official claiming that Russia was suffering staggering losses despite Ukraine's supply. It's just not the case. The fact is that the successes of the Ukrainian military have been limited to a little section on the Baltic Sea, that's by Odessa, which has had limited naval actions where the Ukrainians have been able to take out a few Russian ships. But the point is that these Black Sea operations are doing nothing strategically on the ground. The key factor is that Russia now has increasing control over these two provinces, these two eastern sections of Ukraine, which Russia has coveted to get access to the Black Sea. So the New York Times frontline reporting has shifted substantially. They're saying, for instance, on the city, the retreat from Avdeevka, these problems are exacerbated by the flat and unforgiving terrain outside the city. Without dominant hills, rivers, or extensive fortifications of the kind built around Avdeevka over the latter part of the decade, Ukraine will probably have to cede more ground to hold back Russian units. Ukraine does not have a well-established secondary line to pull back to. That's the problem. So Western pundits are beginning to understand that they're going to have to shift in the story. And the other part of the story that's coming out, the Wall Street Journal did a report on how the war in Europe boosts the U.S. economy. I've been saying this is one of the major reasons we're fighting this war is because the billions of dollars, a large part of it is going into give a payday to the arms manufacturers in the United States. So if we take a look at this story in the Wall Street Journal, and I'm reading a report here, an analysis that was done, a very good analysis that was done on a Substack, and Substacks are getting much better reading these days. But the point is that you're finding that the truth is coming out in these kinds of Substack publications and other analysts. So the war in Europe boosting U.S. production, without doing any of the fighting in Ukraine, it's proxy war both for Europe right now and for the United States, defense output has surged in the last 2 years. The Biden administration estimates that 64% of the 61 billion Ukrainian aid flows back to the U.S. defense base. Now, the only problem with that is I don't think there's accurate accounting being done of the money. And I'm sure a large portion of it is being stolen. I'm quite confident that the reason the Department of Justice, another woke communist organization that is now a political prosecuting organization like the Gestapo in Nazi Germany, the Department of Justice, worthless Department of Justice, refuses to end up the corruption in the Biden family, which is in the presidency, because this woke establishment that's controlling the State Department, controlling the CIA, the Pentagon, and the Defense Department, they like the corruption. So now the reason the border is open, they're in the drug business, they're in the cartel business. You can't run a drug business without a bank. And I know that from having caught HSBC for money laundering. Paid a $1.9 billion fine and nobody went to jail. Senate Permanent Investigating Committee wrote a 500-page report showing how the HSBC was laundering money for the drug cartels on the border. The fentanyl coming into the country, you don't think the CIA is monitoring it? CIA is benefiting from it. And it's part of this agenda to depopulate the world, kill people. Well, that's what our leaders want. I think our leaders have become demonic. So the Ukraine is the cheapest way for the U.S. to enhance its security. This is what The Economist is writing. The fighting is done by the Ukrainians. They're the people who are being killed. The U.S. and Europe are supplying them weapons, making money. This war is one of the more corrupt wars I've ever seen in my lifetime. Maybe it's just finally that the corruption of all wars is being seen. I'm going to have to do some programs on this because this has been known for a long time. The only beneficiaries of war are the bankers and the arms manufacturers, the arms dealers, and the politicians whom they pay off, and the generals who are planning to retire with cushy positions on the boards of the arms manufacturers. It's a racket. And it's a racket that kills people, causes wars, and we're headed into World War III. Right now, I'll cover this in a minute, but right now we've got an extensive fighting going on in the Gaza Strip, renewed fighting going on in the Gaza Strip. Okay, so let's continue with the stories I've posted today on thetruthcentral.com. And I try to post the stories every day that I'm going to cover, so you can take a look at thetruth.com to see the stories we're talking about. Okay, now this strategic issue, this Russia capture of Avdeevka, is going to reverberate across Europe. This is the Substack analysis I was referring to. So Russia, having captured this town after this protracted battle, it ends in Kiev had a chaotic retreat in which the Ukrainians even abandoned their wounded troops. And this was taking place as this Western elite was meeting in Germany for this year's Munich Security Conference, which is coming up over the weekend. Now, Germany is in a tight spot, and they're probably not going to be able to provide much more aid to Ukraine, but rather they're playing a behind-the-scenes strategic shift. What they're doing is they're saying to Poland that Russia could attack Poland. So Germany right now is radicalizing the situation and getting Putin and Medvedev to worry that NATO is preparing to go to war with Russia because they're warmongering on the theme that Russia wants to expand into NATO. Now, Russia has already won the war of logistics and the war of attrition with NATO. And NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg declared almost exactly that 1 year ago by saying that the counteroffensive was a failure. And now Ukraine is again on the defensive. And you're going to see Russia advancing. The time is set forth now for a Russian offensive that could make significant territorial gains. The key point, I think, if you want to really analyze the war in Ukraine, is whether or not Russia decides to take Kiev, or say Kiev these days, Kiev. If Russia decides to take the capital city, which is more in the center of Ukraine, Russia has decided that they're going to essentially take over the management of Ukraine to make sure that NATO doesn't infringe on Ukraine, and NATO gives up this proxy war because they will have had a government, the Zelensky government, which is as corrupt as they get, disbanded. Now, what's going on in the United States around this is Navalny, who is a opponent of Putin, died in jail on Friday, and so the Congress, the anti-Russian Democratic Party Marxists, are demanding that the House pass the Senate's proxy funding bill when it resumes session later this month, in order to provide even more billions of dollars to go into this Ukrainian dark pit. And I'm sure that lots of it's being stolen. But again, the West, what's unclear, I'll read a paragraph of this analysis. It remains unclear when and what terms the conflict will end. But the writing is on the wall, and this clearly reads that Russia's security guarantee requests will be met to some extent or another. Therefore, why the West is now planning for a decades-long confrontation with Russia remains to be understood. Okay, so the significance is a geopolitical shift that Germany is regarding the US to lead from behind and to push NATO into a greater confrontation with Russia on the theme that Russia wants to capture the Eastern European countries that the Soviet Russians held, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, now Slovakia, etc. So you're going to see the attempt to more militarize Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, and I suspect France will join. And if these countries start putting more money into the military, again, it's going to raise the expectations. We heard from Medvedev this week, a second time, that if NATO attacks Russia, we will have a nuclear war. And I think these insane people in the Pentagon and the CIA, which really want to destroy America, you got to understand they're globalists and Marxists. They want to destroy the current order in order to produce their globalist utopia, which will be dystopia for all the rest of us, as they think we're useless and they aim to kill us. So the point is that I think we could have a nuclear war, and I'm warning everybody that it could be this year's October surprise to end the election. If we have a nuclear war, they'll cancel the election and Donald Trump won't be president. I'm sure that plan is being discussed. Putin and Medvedev would not be signaling, back-channeling through Tucker Carlson this message if they weren't trying to warn everybody that a nuclear war is being contemplated within the United States military-industrial complex strategy. It's a very frightening moment. And I don't mean to alarm everybody, but I want everybody aware just how dangerous these nutcases like Noah Harari, who is just supposed to be an agenda setter. Well, he's been the spokesperson. They're trying to, Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum knows they've overplayed their hand. And now that we can see what these demons, I mean satanic demons, with satanic blood rituals, with satanic operations in heart. This is the kind of intensity of evil that I've never seen let loose on the world before. And you have filling in the vacuum Satan as the world withdraws from God. And this is an extremely dangerous period of time because Satan hates God. Only God can create life. Satan hates life. Satan would have a nuclear war to harvest the souls for hell that no longer believe in God after this woke nonsense. Okay, let's cover a couple more stories. I'm watching very carefully the European industrial wipeout. Now, this net zero nonsense, which is a Marxist uh, narrative, a word game, a Marxist attempt to destroy capitalism. Okay, there's an article in the Telegraph in the UK which is saying essentially that Europe is facing an industrial wipeout as Europe has gone to net zero and stopped. Germany's shut down its nuclear plants. Okay, so in China, the industrial strategy is to get all the coal, all the oil, all the natural gas they can get to prop up their economy while claiming they're going to go to net zero. And the idea that the world's going to go to net zero when China doesn't care, lying, oh, China sets these goals. China has no intention of fulfilling these goals. China lies as effectively as the US lies. Governments lie. And I'm going to be making that point very strongly when we release next week a book I've written on the JFK assassination, which I think is going to shock the nation. At any rate, Luca de Mao, the boss of the giant French manufacturer Renault, didn't mince his word. He said this week, he asked for a coherent response from Britain and France and the rest of the European industrial nations to abandon this net zero, because they're going to abandon Europe to in this transition to wind and solar, to renewable fuels. Europe is going to abandon Europe now not only to the Muslim invasion, but to China. What the Telegraph wrote was this transition from petrol to battery-powered vehicles is not working quite as well as planned. It's meant to spark a wave of investment, create a swath of well-paid green jobs, and dramatically cut carbon emissions at the same time. All complete leftist lies, because the electric vehicles don't work. You got to plug them in all the time. There's not enough chargers. In the winter, they freeze up. You get Chicago had a wasteland of electric vehicles that couldn't be recharged when the weather went extremely cold. And by the way, it looks like the El Nino is going to shift to La Nina again, which means the world will return to cooling. That could happen in the next few months. I've been reading articles about it in legitimate climate science, not this Marxist climate science. At any rate, Renault looked to play a big role in this electric vehicle surge, but it isn't happening. That's the point. It isn't happening. And without the tax subsidies, so Biden launched into the tax credit scheme, going to pour $400 billion into subsidies. When that money dries up, the EV market goes down the tubes. It just doesn't work. And so with Europe going to more expensive energy, wind and solar, that does not work consistently. Wind doesn't blow all the time, sun doesn't shine all the time. You're finding that Europe is deindustrializing because it's no longer competitive. And that's going to be a tragedy. If Europe is moving in a direction of militarizing, wanting a confrontation with Russia, and its economy is going to hell. What's China doing? China is bracing to flood the world market with cheap electric vehicles. So China right now, this port in the Netherlands, which has like 17,000 cargo ships regularly in its deep waters every year to unload, China's biggest car maker, BYD, is flooding Europe with electric cars. So electric cars, along with lithium batteries and solar panels, are what President Xi Jinping has proclaimed to be the pillars of his economy. Well, the Chinese economy is going through a massive downturn. It has a property slump. This Evergrande company, this debt-laden property developer in China, failed, and China's been trying to prop up its securities market with about $8.6 trillion pumped by the government to keep up the stock market. But China is not recovering. The youth in China are having a hard time finding jobs, and China's betting on the BYDs planning to flood Europe and Great Britain with electric vehicles. So what this French uh, Luca de Mayo, D-M-E-O, who is head of Renault, said that with the internal combustion energy, our leadership was undisputed. For a century, we benefited from our expertise with this technology, and it was a barrier for newcomers. But when they go to wind and solar, China has the cheaper technology. They have cheap labor, slave labor in China. So they can build the electric vehicles. They can put the time and money into building cheap electric vehicles with slave labor that Europe can't compete with. They're going to flood the market with it. Now, I don't think it's going to work for China either. I think the Europeans are going to realize that unless you want to run around these little European cities with an electric vehicle, which is possible as long as it's not winter, these are not practical vehicles. And that's the problem. The technology doesn't work. Now, I want to cover one or two more issues in terms of what's going on in general, because I'm thinking that today we have a massive amount of disarray within the GOP. You had Paul Ryan, Rhino, who is bashing Trump popularism. Okay, and he's trying to go back and saying, Paul Ryan said, I'm going to read a quotation from Paul Ryan. I am in the minority of my party right now. I'm not the establishment. I'm frankly an anti-establishment Republican. And you, I think, can safely argue that the Trump establishment and Trump populism is more an isolationist strain that I think is wrong and dangerous. Okay, so now what you find is that the Republican Party is a globalist party, and it is bonded with the Democratic Party, which is a Marxist party. And the two of them want government spending. They want to destroy the middle class. They want to move to a model that Hitler would have liked. Hitler was a National Socialist. He was not a fascist in the sense of right wing. He wanted to have multinational corporations control the world with interlocking directorates. That's why Alan Dulles and the Wall Street crowd before World War II in the 1930s funded Hitler. Hitler was funded from Wall Street because they liked the idea of the multinational corporations ruling the world. And I'm also finding that Mike Pence is going along with this. Now, I'm disappointed in Mike Pence in many ways, but I thought Mike Pence had a very strong possibility of taking a lead had he focused on moral leadership. He is a strong Christian, and that I think is his strong suit, but he did not recover from the January 6th failure to question the certification of various states for Donald Trump in the 2020 election. And that cost him dearly. We'll also see that Mike Pence is raising $20 million for this foundation he's created on the same theme, arguing against Trump. The Republican Party is going to divide. Trump is not going to have the solid support of the Republican Party, because what he wants, what Paul Ryan and Mike Pence want to do, is they want to return the Republican Party onto this business path of globalism. And the globalists have combined with this is what I don't think Mike Pence understands, with the woke Marxists in order to destroy capitalism and create a future in which the human race is considered unnecessary, except for these elite few who think they can be transhuman. Now, it was interesting to see also that Donald Trump had put DeSantis on his list for possible vice presidential candidates. And I still think that's a possibility. I think it could come around that DeSantis and Trump quit fighting each other. The Florida Senate just passed a bill to release Epstein documents. DeSantis is going to sign it. More needs to be known about Epstein, who was Bill Clinton's buddy, and the pedophilia that was at the heart of this corrupt Democratic Party. So as we end this week, we're going to see a lot. I want Chris to comment. because I think all this builds up to two things. One is we are already. Oh, I was going to cover one more story in Israel, but I want to do that before we wrap up. Israel is ramping up in the south, and they've started bombing in the southern part around the city of Rafah. Israel's not stopping the offensive. Seeing that the Israelis are allowing people to understand that this is getting rid of Hamas. I'm traveling. You can see I'm in a hotel room. I'm in Nashville at the National Christian Broadcasters annual convention. And Israel has here a booth where they are showing in this, meta universe. It's a very dramatic instance where two children in the October 7th attack are calling in to the Israelis hotline for help. Their parents have just been killed by the Hamas terrorists who came into these kibbutzes that were unarmed and just mercilessly, brutally raped, killed, tortured, burned alive Israelis. These two children, very young, are stuck in this house. They look outside. Their parents were killed in the front yard. They're bleeding. And the Israeli hotline's trying to counsel them to go into a safe room and survive. They finally rescue the children. But it's tragic to see the children just lost their two parents in this brutal attack. Yet the world, the Biden administration, this Blinken communist, who's our Secretary of State, all want to pressure Israel to go to a truce, which essentially would be to allow Gaza to go back into the hands of Hamas. Biden wants to create a Palestinian state and recognize a Palestinian state, along with the United Nations. This Israel hatred is frightening. And if Israel falls, Israel's not going to fall. I think biblically God determined that Israel would return to a Jewish state, the diaspora would come back. I believe that happened in 1948 when Harry Truman allowed the division of Palestine to create the state of Israel. I think Donald Trump putting the capital of Israel in Jerusalem was another biblical movement. If we have a war with Iran now supplying this regional money, Biden administration, John Kerry made sure that Iran got airplanes full of cash under Obama. And under Biden, it's now back in the oil business. The sanctions have been largely rescinded so that billions have been returned to Iran. Iran's funding terrorism. Iran's funding it in Gaza with Hamas, Hezbollah, in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, which are blocking a lot of commercial shipping in the Red Sea, forcing it to go around the Cape of Africa, much more expensive, much more time, about a third more time and expense, which will cause massive disarray in the international economy over time. And Israel, and by the way, and also the Iranian Guard in both Iraq and Syria attacking our military bases. It's already a regional war with Iran at the center. Iran's fighting a proxy war through these terrorist groups against Israel. Well, Israel bombed Rafah. They flattened the mosque. They destroyed homes. It was a terrible night. Israel's trying to force the civilians to get out of the south part of the Gaza, while Israel does a massive sweep through. Israel is going to demilitarize the Gaza. And I think they're not going to stop until they're finished. But what I'm saying here, this entire broadcast today, this entire podcast, is that we are headed towards a massive economic decline. It's going to the credit amount that we have both in the world, in Europe, in particular the United States. We're paying now $34 trillion in debt. It's at a very accelerated pace. We're paying $1 trillion a year in interest on the debt. This is not sustainable. Talk about sustainable. This is not sustainable. And Chris, if you'll put up please get a copy. Call Swiss America. Your dollar's purchasing power is going to go down dramatically. It's already, just take $100 and see how little it buys at a grocery store. You've got to get some gold and silver. And it's now get something that appreciates in value. Gold today, again, is over $2,000 an ounce. It's been there since the beginning of the year. To get this book about how coming global crash will create an historic gold rush, call Swiss America. The number is 1-800-519-6268. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-519-6268, and talk to them about how you can get some gold, especially in your IRAs and 401ks. You've got thousands of dollars in investment. Do not trust that the stock market's going to stay at this level. We're going to have a massive crash. I think they'll try to postpone it until after the election, but I'm not sure it will work because there's a massive amount of commercial real estate that has to be refinanced. And I expect through the spring and summer, we're going to see another wave of bank failures. Chris, you want to comment? We've covered a lot of ground today. And tomorrow, by the way, are going to have an interview. I recommend everybody watch tomorrow because we're going to have an interview with Todd Callender. Todd has done brilliant work on the World Health Organization,
Yeah,
depopulation
a big difference.
big difference. So, look, also follow us on CloutHub. We're not being shadow banned on CloutHub. We're still being shadow banned on X and on YouTube. I don't care what I'm still the jury's out for me on Elon Musk. I'm still very, very suspicious of the Elon Musk and watching it very carefully. I'm being censored. When I got restored, I didn't get restored on X. I just created a new channel. They never gave me back my viewers. I had 100 and some thousand followers. I lost all those. They didn't restore them.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. Elon Musk is not running everything over there. There's still probably some moles from the old Twitter. The CEO is one of those who has made a career working with woke companies. So I'm sure there is a bunch of shadow banning.
Well, you're much more generous than that than I am because I'm suspecting the CEO is CEO, and if he wanted the place cleaned up, it'd be cleaned up.
Well,
Certainly, if I were CEO, it'd be cleaned up.
Interestingly, I could see him shadow banning because of because you do talk about this whole transhumanist movement, and he is a focal part of. Excuse me. Yes, and well, he's focal and vocal. How about that?
He owns these companies trying to merge, the global elite with machines and would put chips in their brains and all these other things. And I'm just not comfortable with Elon Musk. And electric vehicles. Elon Musk has done a lot of things. I think are signaling that he's one of the Silicon Valley. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm considering Silicon Valley dominated by basically Satanists. And I'll probably be doing more on that as we go along because I want the satanic agenda exposed fully. So, Chris, any comments on what we covered today?
Well, first off, I want to just pull back and say there probably isn't that big of a difference between the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization.
Probably
I was
not.
just thinking one is right now trying to take. They're actually trying to take the power away from nations, while the other one's working on ways to take all the money and property away from everybody else. But I guess that's a similar vein between the two.
Yeah, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. We're going to kill you. You won't mind because you'll be dead.
That's right.
You're the problem. This is the Anthropocene. You exhale carbon dioxide. You're killing us all. So do us a favor and just euthanize yourself and be gone.
And as far as the global crash is concerned, the best economic indicator when it comes to a pending market problem is to see when not just the big business moguls are selling off, but Congress members are selling off.
Yeah, Congress is in on the deal. I mean, Congress is bought and sold. I mean, there's Mitch McConnell. I keep saying with his wife Elon, Chow. She's owned by China. Her family is wealthy in China. That family would be done away with if it were.
I understand that point, but he's still disgusting in a lot of other ways.
Well, he's discussing in many ways. Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, the GOP, as far as I'm concerned, is largely worthless.
Right.
And I'm not a Republican. The Trump following is not a Republican movement. It's across all kinds of lines. but it comes from people who are not globalists, people who want traditional values, want the Constitution restored, believe in the Constitution, the original idea of America. And they want this woke education, the transgenders, out of schools. And I've written books on this, trying to get this across, and we'll be doing more on it in the coming weeks.
The more people who learn this, the better. But you have both parties criticizing what they call MAGA. Could you imagine people who criticize those who want to make America great again? What I call them, and I'm going to coin this, and I'm hoping we all follow this now, it's the massa movement. Because basically, under Obama, the country sucked in a lot of ways.
Well, what's massa?
So this movement, this globalist movement within the country, this leftist movement altogether is called the massa movement. Make America suck again, or make America stink again, if you want to go a little cleaner.
Stupid again.
Yeah, we're going to call them the massa movement from now on.
Well, I don't think it's going to catch on, but
I'm giving it legs. I'm doing
it. Well, I admire the effort.
Right.
Let's wrap up. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. God did not create this place to fail. Satan may be making a desperate effort to win. Satan's a joke. Take a look at this transgenderism. Bring in open borders, all these Hispanics, and saying, "Well, we're gonna make them woke, make them, give them money. They want to work." I mean, the idea of men in dresses with the machismo of the Spanish population is not going to go down particularly well. I can guarantee you. But the point is, the Hispanic population still believes in God, still believes in Jesus Christ. This population, if we can reach them and work with them to bring them into the churches. So I've launched a new program. We'll be talking more about it. It's called hablaconunmd.com, which means speak with a doctor, habla con un médico. And it is designed to work through the churches to allow Spanish-speaking people in the United States to talk with a Spanish-speaking doctor by telephone. Do get a copy of this book. The banks are already doing a gold rush. There's Habla con un MD. And I have an English counterpart to it, which is called getrxmedsnow.com. And we're going to be rolling both of these programs out next month in March. There's getrxmedsnow.com. And I'm going to start linking that up with Christian pastors. The whole message of Jesus Christ was healing people first, physically, in order to be the door to healing them spiritually. We need to get healing back into our churches. We need to get a message of sanity and of God and the gospel, the gospel-based teaching and discussion of political issues brought back into the churches. Dr. Jerome Corsi, God will win here. God did not, but in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, let's get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for allowing so many millions of babies to be cut apart in the womb. Only God can create life. We have no right to take it away. And the Democratic Party is going to run on the right of a woman to choose, which means kill more babies in the womb, even late term, and harvest their body parts. It's brutal. It's satanic. We need to have God back into our schools, into our hearts, into our marriages. We need to raise children with a moral education that's Christianity based. Jesus Christ is my personal Lord and Savior and has been. And so this has got to be a mission to fight this evil. We see this evil in all corners of the world. And it's got to lose. It will lose. God will make sure we'll have a judgment of God. And I pray it's not a nuclear war. We can avoid that. 2 Chronicles 7:11 says, if we do repent, if we get into revival, God will hear our plea and heal our land. Dr. Jerome Corsi today. It's Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. Thank you for joining us. God bless.